Welcome to Clone Wars Conversations on Star Wars Chit-Chat, where we answer questions such as, do you need to watch these unfinished episodes to understand Season 7 of the Clone Wars? Are they essential to Anakin and Obi-Wan's journeys? And should they have been finished and released, considering they are all canon? Well, all of this, plus so much more, is discussed in the Clone Wars Legacy Project episode special for Clone Wars Conversations, where we delve into the unfinished episodes called The Crystal Crisis on Utapau, so stay tuned. Hello there to my fellow Force users, welcome to Star Wars Chit-Chat, the show where I take you on a journey through all things Star Wars with a variety of guests. But why me? Well, aside from being a lifelong fan, I've interviewed many Star Wars authors, content creators, and I've read every canon comic, most canon novels, loads of legend stuff, but most importantly, I'm incredibly passionate about Star Wars. And this episode is another edition of Clone Wars Conversations. That's where myself, Dave and Maff go through all episodes of the Clone Wars, and Maff has never seen them before, whereas Dave and I have. I've seen them quite a lot more than Dave. But in these episodes, we're doing Clone Wars Legacy, which is the 3 multimedia projects made from unused episodes of the Clone Wars. So last week, or last episode, you would have heard us do Darth Maul, Son of Dathomir, the comic. And then in the future, we're going to be doing Dark Disciple, which you'll be able to see behind me on YouTube. And this week, we are doing the unfinished episodes. So these are the Crystal Crisis on Utapau episodes. And so you can see these on YouTube. I'll put a link in the description because they're just on there, open and free. And these are episodes that were never made into other ones. Now, I will put a little stipulation here, which is there are actually 8 unfinished episodes of Clone Wars, but 4 of them are the Bad Batch episodes, and they redid them and put them in Season 7. Why they haven't redone these ones and put them into Season 7, I don't know, but I'm sure we will get into those. But as I said, I'm here with my 2 co-hosts, Dave and Maff. Maff, who's never seen the Clone Wars before, but in a really unexpected turn, we're doing an episode where I'd never seen anything before either. I'd never seen these episodes, so it was all fresh for me. I had a vague idea of what they were kind of about, but it was really, really cool being able to see them. And the way I would describe them is PlayStation 1 graphics. It's kind of how they look. And there'll be a couple of photos up that I'll pop on YouTube as we go, but in Maff's background, you can see them. So we'll do the usual and we'll get this episode kicked off. So we'll go to Dave first. So Dave, good sir, you've actually seen these episodes more than I have, which is quite surprising. That doesn't happen very often. But these episodes, so tell us, you watched them, a month ago or so? Tell us what your kind of first, did you know about these before I mentioned them? Or tell us about your first experience.
I had no idea these existed. I just heard about them through you when we were chatting about it. It was like, oh, this sounds interesting. And actually, I say that, I think I may have heard this. You might have mentioned it before, and again at that kind of interim period when Disney was taking over Lucasfilm and what have you. But I consigned it to the recycle bin in my brain, and so yeah, I guess every time we chat, I always come off the conversation and quite energized, and I want to go on to the next thing because I've been in a holding pattern to go on to the next thing. And then I saw it was like, an hour and a half. So it was like a movie length thing. And I was like, let's have a go at this then. And like you say, PlayStation 1 graphics is not necessarily way off. But honestly, you get past it quite quickly. And I think Math's probably the same. You're a bit on the younger side, Mike. But you have to bear in mind, when I first, my first exposure to computer games was an Atari, when you basically had 2 little white blocks either side of the screen and you could play tennis, and it's like, fucking hell, this is amazing.
Good old Pong.
And then you go into the arcade and playing Space Invaders and Asteroids and things like that, and you're like, oh, this is amazing. And then you go back, periodically, you'll go back to the arcades every few months. You see the evolution through the 80s of the graphics getting better and better. I mean, if I'd have been, teenage Dave or early teenage Dave with these sorts of graphics in the arcade, I'd have been well happy. So yeah, it didn't take me that long to get past it. And I think the fact that the sound design is all there, the acting, there's absolutely nothing skimped on the acting. It seems so close. Like, just some of the artistry and rendering is obviously not there. And you're thinking, as you said, why didn't they finish them off? Because if you think from scripting all the way through, you've got to do all the, the script revisions and everything. You've got to agree all those. You've got to get your voice actors in. You've got to do the bulk of the animation. and then it just seems to me the polishing is what was required. So yeah, didn't know to, I quite enjoy this, to, oh shit, we're recording, so I need to remind myself what happened. And yeah, so I've been through the whole gambit with this one.
Amazing stuff. Well, we'll go on to Maff then. So Maff, your experience with these, again, I mean, fresh for you, but fresh for us. So this is not a specifically unique situation for you. How'd you find them?
They are fresh for me because I finished watching them this morning. So, not like Dave, I left mine till the last minute. It's strange the fact that, like Dave says, it's all there. It's just needed polishing and that. And why they didn't just take a bit of time just to, because, I mean, we're going to get into it, but the story's good. The voice acting is good. I think there's a couple of points where some of the lines feel like they could have been tidied up a little bit, but all in all, everything's there. You do kind of forget that it is like a PlayStation 1, 2 kind of graphics. I mean, my first computer was ZX Spectrum 48K, rubber keyboard. It was, a little tape deck to kind of
machine.
Yeah. It took you 5 minutes to load the game, and then it would crash. But it's one of those weird things that after a while you forget that it's just, it's this kind of easy model that they've used. It's amusing because, like, when they're walking, 9 times out of 10, they're like just hovering along. But then it comes to the lightsaber fight. I think you'd mentioned it the other day to me. All of a sudden, you expect that just to be kind of, they both hold a stick, but there's real movement there, and you do after a while. You just forget all that. I mean, it's going to be interesting when we go into season 7 that the graphics upgrade will be quite big to this.
It's massive. Well, you think, so Clone Wars originally finished in 2013, 2014-ish. So the animation stopped in 2013. Season 7 of the Clone Wars was released in 2020. Right. So they had all of Clone Wars, then they get bought out by Disney, they have all of Rebels, and then they go back and make Clone Wars. So the animation is genuinely next level.
That's going to be interesting because, like, I wonder if the lightsabers are going to change.
Nah, it's really weird because even
Rebels, they're
really
thinner.
It's very odd of Rebels because although I love it, the animation style is a lot more cartoony. And what's really odd is when you watch the Bad Batch series, which we'll get to when we finish Clone Wars and have a little break, the Bad Batch series is the exact same style as Clone Wars. So when you see the characters in the Bad Batch episode of Clone Wars, when you then watch it feels very much like the Bad Batch actually continues from Clone Wars. Actually, I'll tell you a tiny bit about Bad Batch, which is fun. When the first episode starts, it starts like an episode of Clone Wars. So it's got the fighting on we're going, and that kind of thing. And then if I remember correctly, a little Clone Wars logo pops up and then it burns away and it becomes the Bad Batch. And that's the only so the animation style is like, I mean, Bad Batch is better animation than season 7 of the Clone Wars because it's just after, but Rebels, I don't know why, because even Resistance, which is a very weird show, which I hope we'll not have to tackle, that in itself is completely different again. That's like there's an anime made by the guys of Rooster Teeth, and it's called Ruby, and it's like this very peculiar, like, it's almost like it's like animation on like a kids TV show kind of thing. It's like 3D models, but they look 2D almost like Borderlands graphics. It's really weird. So every time they launch a new show, they seem to do another style. And I don't really know why, to be honest with you. But you didn't find that too distracting and you found these episodes still...
No, I think it's... The thing is, the story's good, to be fair. You kind of... I mean, it's weird because it's like, it's an hour and a half, basically.
Yeah.
There's no breaks in it, so if you watch it and you think, I'll just watch first episode, you can kind of guess where they would break them up.
Yeah.
But they do flow into each other quite well. I mean, that's how they're meant to be. But I think, as I say, I think I watched a little bit last night, and I think I stopped basically where I think the first episode would have done. And then I went to watch this one, and I just watched the entire lot, and they were like, yeah, right. And as I say, the story's good. It just needed a bit of polishing up. But to be fair, you don't, once you get into it, you don't notice it.
It is just so odd that they decided, because from what I've seen of the Bad Batch episodes, if I understand correctly, they're either completely untouched or barely. And I'm like, I know animation takes time and etc., but it is very odd that why they didn't decide to do these. And also, it's not like they've gone, these aren't canon. These are canon. Things happen in these episodes that get referenced in, like, it's a minor reference, like a book or a comic or something, but it's like, why have you got this content that actually is not on Disney Plus, it's not on StarWars.com anymore? The one random person uploaded it to YouTube, and it's been monetized, so I assume Disney's making money off it because they've got the rights to it, and Disney are pretty ruthless, so they would have taken that off. So it's like Disney looks from have let someone upload onto YouTube. All 4 of them, they've played it at a couple of conventions before. You can't get it anywhere else, but it's canon, but they've not redone it. But they have redone the other 4, and I'm like, what? I don't understand.
Because I also, when we read Son of Dathomir, and I haven't started that Disciple yet, but it just feels like maybe they should have done all these as their own little part of it. This could have been season 7, then they could have moved on to season 8 afterwards.
Yeah,
Son of Dathomir were brilliant. I really enjoyed reading it, but how amazing would it have been to see it on screen?
it would have been amazing. But I also think it's a weird one where with these episodes, I would have been happy for them to release a comic of the Crystal Crisis on Utapau. They've already got all the script. Granted, again, it would take effort and work, but like the lightsaber battles and some of the action scenes, although it's better than I expected, it is still like, it takes you out a little bit. And I'm like, I kind of would rather it was either comic and I could fill in the gaps in my brain, or they just kind of sucked it up and did it. There's probably some sort of long-term plan with Disney. I have a theory, but before go ahead.
The one good thing about it is you get to hear sassy Obi-Wan several times.
I was going to say there's a lot more comedy in these episodes, but I have a theory as to why that is. So we'll delve into that. But I want to ask you guys a question that I haven't asked before because it's not been relevant. Do you think these episodes, answering probably the question that the YouTube video is going to be, is, are these worth watching? Now, we're going to delve deep into talk about all these episodes, the 4 episodes, and very hard to figure out which episode's which, but I've got a loose idea. There's some very interesting elements to this, but I'll come to you first, Dave. In general, do you think these are essential Clone Wars watches? Do you think they are kind of bonuses? How do you, after watching these, what do you think about them? If someone hasn't seen them, would you recommend them, or what are your thoughts?
If you start off assuming someone is into the Clone Wars already, then I would put this in the better episodes. We talked about the droids get lost in the desert and see mirages sort of thing. I would not have them in that pile, but I would for this one. And the reason being, it's very much in context in terms of where we are in Clone Wars. And you can see, I feel like this one, definitely we see a lot of sassy Obi-Wan, which is always good. But also Anakin, you can see his connection to Ahsoka and how he's wrestling with that. I think that comes across, and I can't remember, maybe they'll play on that more in the season 7 episodes that we've got left. But I don't remember of everything we've covered so far. I don't remember it coming across quite so much how he was struggling and wrestling with that. So for that reason, I think it's important in the canon.
Very interesting points there. Yeah, I would agree with that. I would say I'm glad I watched these this time because this feels like a connection, a really strong connection between almost the Clone Wars movie, the Jedi Temple bombing arc, and then this. They would actually, if you hadn't seen all the in-between stuff, it would, I think, cohesively make sense. We'll come to you, Maff. What do you think? Like, do you share the similar thoughts as Dave, or do you think these are maybe missable? More so, if someone's listening and they've watched...
They're not missable.
Not missable, because they've watched... So you watched season 6 of the Clone Wars, and you guys so far believe people should consume Son of Dathomir, because otherwise the whole story makes no sense. And then with Unfinished, we believe that you should watch them.
I think... It's frustrating the fact that they didn't. I mean, I don't know what's to come, so I don't know. It's just there's a little thing. It's like what Yoda says at the end when he says, "Oh, yeah, these crystals are from legends and that, from old tales of old." And it's kind of think, is that going to come back into play further down the line? I don't know.
Death Star. The Death Star is powered by Kyber crystals.
Oh yeah, the crystals.
So yeah, it did.
So yeah, it did. All right, answered real question.
Rogue One, basically. Rogue One is basically the successor to these episodes.
In which case, then even more so, this plays a lot more to it. I mean, the great episodes and that I think, there's a lot of fun. There is a lot of banter between them both. And that, yeah, we get sassy Obi-Wan, which is always good. But it's like, I mean, obviously the animation is very much kind of,
I describe it as janky.
yeah. But I've made a note. There's a couple of times where something's said. I think there's a bit where Obi-Wan has spoken to Yoda, and it's like, oh, I've spoken to Yoda, and Anakin's like, oh, so we have to go back home. And he says, no. He says, let's make Master Too Long's death,
Make
before
sure it's not in
something.
vain, kind of thing.
And they obviously, there's a switch in the face of Anakin of like, yes, and it's a little bit of a kind of like the dark side kind of comfort, but that adds to him. It's that kind of thing. I can now let loose. I can really go at it, and yeah, I mean, even later on with the two droids, it's like just keep your one alive. It's like, oops, I've accidentally broken mine, because he just went full out, because he felt I'm here. I can do what I kind of want.
Well, that's a whole subject thing I do want to talk about. Is I think, I mean, Dave touched upon it as well, but there's Anakin in I think this is one of the most important episodes for Anakin, and I would say with the two of you, I agree. I think these two episodes are important to watch. I'm annoyed at myself for missing them. And I will say they really connect the dots, I think, vibe-wise to Revenge of the Sith. And I know, obviously, Maff, you haven't watched Revenge of the Sith in a while. But these, we've kind of touched upon it a bit, of the comedy side. But I just want to very briefly, because any listeners who haven't seen these episodes, again, are on YouTube, and we've all said you should watch them. But very briefly, just in case anyone isn't aware, and then we can kind of, because also, it's really hard to figure out the separation of these episodes. I think I've done it in my notes, but I don't want to be that strict. We'll just generally talk about stuff. Because I think, as you guys have kind of alluded to, the plot of these episodes isn't the important thing. It's Anakin and Obi-Wan post Ahsoka, pre Revenge of the Sith, and it's quite an important thing. But very in general, Anakin and Obi-Wan go to Utapau to investigate the death of Master Tuan, and they basically find out, yeah, she was killed for a reason. Oh no, and there's bits of conflict and etc. And it's essentially them doing that. And on stumbling about what she was investigating, they essentially find a giant Kyber crystal, as in like the size of like a double-decker bus kind of thing. And they're like, or maybe a bit smaller, maybe like a really big sedan or something. They found a really big Kyber crystal. Then one episode is them just transporting the Kyber crystal, and then it's kind of them, spoiler alert, destroying the Kyber crystal at the end. I mean, the episode's called The Big Bang, and we never see a Kyber crystal of this size again till Rogue One, so it's not a surprise. And then, General Grievous gets involved, that kind of thing, but a lot of it is Palpatine is trying to hide this crystal away somewhere, and trying to not show it, really. And Dooku gets involved, and Grievous, etc. But it's Obi-Wan and Anakin go on something which seems like quite a normal, almost calm adventure, and it becomes this big thing, which is really what happens with both of them. And it's on Utapau, which is a major part of Revenge of the Sith, which it's in Revenge of the Sith. That's where Obi-Wan is when Order 66 gets activated, when he's riding his Varactyl.
Spoiler, Maff's not seen it for ages.
Yeah, but that's the connection here. And then also, that's also where Obi-Wan fights Grievous as well. So it's quite a few. This is really connected to Revenge of the Sith, which again, it is surprising they didn't decide to redo this, but that's the general thing. So now we're free, guys, to talk about what we want. So the comedy of it, I want to get your thoughts then. So Dave,
I just wanted to ask before we get into our other points.
Please.
So, because I've not watched Rogue One for ages, I keep threatening to go back to it, but again, because we're on this project, I'm like, no, I'll keep that to the side. How do we know this massive Kyber crystal powers the Death Star? Was it mentioned as dialogue in Rogue One?
Yeah.
Okay.
So when they're on Jeddah and they're mining Jeddah, they're mining it for Kyber. And there's a line from Chirrut Imwe, the Guardian of the Will, and he says, he's wearing like a Kyber necklace or something, and he says, Jeddah's got the heart of Kyber. And Galen Erso, when he's talking about how they figured out the Death Star, is because the Kyber crystals are shown in this episode amplify power. You shoot a blaster at it and it shoots at the strength of 2, 4, 5 blasters. And so Rogue One, when they're kind of explaining it, they say it in passing stuff, but it's essentially the Death Star is powered by Kyber crystals, obviously a lightsaber, you ignite it, there's a little power pack that ignites the crystal. It's just what the Death Star is, like a super giant, massive one of those. And you get to see it. There's 1 or 2 scenes where they are ferrying around giant Kyber crystal chunks. Not quite as big as we saw in this, but really like quite chunky, big suitcase kind of size. So they do specifically mention it, but it's kind of like sprinkled in across the whole of it. But it's again, it's a bit of a mystery to our heroes because they don't fully know what the Death Star is.
Mm.
But so when we rewatch Rogue One, because that is the plan, finish Clone Wars, have a break from loads and loads of series, watch The Tales of, Revenge of the Sith, all the movies, because Maff's hasn't seen sequels since the cinema, and then we'll look back round. So the plan is going to be this year to watch Rogue One, which is going to be good fun. But I want to ask you guys about the comedy of it. So I've written down there's a lot more comedy in this, and originally I found it quite jarring. But then I actually remembered Revenge of the Sith, although it's the darkest Star Wars film, maybe Rogue One, the first half of the film is like weirdly comedic. Like the first scene in Revenge of the Sith is they fly on the ship and they're basically trying to save Palpatine. And there's lots of little scenes like with R2, who's being funny and comedic, and there's like sillier moments. And I always I think my brain filters them out because I'm like, yeah, Revenge of the Sith is so dark and edgy like me. But it's actually very comedic, and a lot of Anakin and Obi-Wan, a lot of their conversation in Revenge of the Sith before they say goodbye to each other for sort of the last time, a lot of it is them just banter. It's just them ripping on each other. And I think this episode really shows that. Sorry, Maff.
It's weird because watching this, there are some really heartfelt. I mean, the bit when they talk about Ahsoka, which we'll get into, and what that leads on to as well, which is probably one of the big things you want to talk about, where they go from the Ahsoka. But this actually kind of built up Revenge. I know I haven't seen Revenge of the Sith for a while, but obviously the big point in Revenge of the Sith when everyone goes, Anakin, you was like a brother to me. These are brothers. These are no. I know that they do kind of say it's, Master and Padawan, but these are now like brothers. These are like, they've got each other's backs. You've always got the one brother who's trying to outdo the other one, and the one who's trying to be, the sensible one. I mean, I didn't mean to laugh when you were talking about something serious about the Kyber crystals, powering the Death Star, but it just amused me because all of a sudden it pops into the point in my head where one of the guys is looking at Anakin's lightsaber, and you just see Anakin move his hand, and all of a sudden, and he was dead.
I loved that bit. I thought that was really cool.
But again, there's the sassy of Obi-Wan. Did you really have to do that? And but this really feels like you can see where the relationship goes, and that it's really weird the fact that they didn't redo these, because this, having watched it, there is so much more to it. Because as I say, that relationship that they've both got, it really plays on it. Them heartfelt moments that we get a bit later on really kind of opens up, because when it first gets mentioned, I thought we were just going to brush under the carpet, but then they go back to it, and then it leads on to something else, and it's like there's so much story and so much story development. They've missed a trick by not actually.
So many people haven't seen this. I genuinely, when I've spoken about Star Wars, it's like everyone's seen the original trilogy. Then, like, the vast majority of Star Wars fans have then seen the prequels. Vast majority have seen the sequels and stuff. And then it's kind of, you almost take away 5 or 10% each tier of Solo and Rogue One, then the live action stuff, then the animated stuff. But like, I'm a massive Star Wars fan, as people know. Like, I consume as much Star Wars content as physically possible. I'd never even considered watching these, really, when they were first announced.
63%.
Well, yeah, and this is the thing. Because I put in Discord, I worked out, I literally went through and counted all the canon novels, and I counted which of them I'd read, and I did the percentage thing, and I've read just under 2/3 exactly, 63%. So I'm going to try and change that. But yeah, Dave, I want to ask you, so with the brother stuff, anything that Maff mentioned about the brothers or whatever, what do you think about all that jazz?
Yeah, I think it's bang on. It just feels like, say, in context of where we are, it feels like we are approaching Revenge of the Sith now. It feels like we're just literally before that. And they have gone from this relationship where, when we met him in Phantom Menace, Anakin was just a little kid, and Obi-Wan sort of got lumbered with him because Qui-Gon got killed. But it's very much, not master and apprentice, but, master and Padawan kind of thing. Whereas as the Clone Wars have gone on, and Anakin, he's really grown up, and he's on par, really. So it is almost like this brotherly relationship. So it makes, for me, as you know, I love New Hope, and it makes that thing about, Obi-Wan and telling Luke about how his dad was murdered and whatever. It makes that make sense that they are brothers, and not a master and his Padawan. So I think for that reason, I think the bantering is not necessary, but it makes sense to me that it's here.
Especially because that's what they're like in Revenge of the Sith. And I will say, with the note of being like brothers, which both of you have very kindly pointed out, I'm going to do a little plug here for Mike Chen's book, Brotherhood, which I've recommended in this podcast numerous times. Everyone on YouTube can see it. I've interviewed Mike Chen about this book. It's a good one. This book is literally, the book starts with Anakin getting through his knighting ceremony with a couple of other Padawans, and it's their first mission together, not as master and apprentice, and how their dynamic changes. And also, this book introduces Asajj Ventress. So I'd say Brotherhood and Dark Disciple are like quintessential Clone Wars books. Brotherhood for before you start Clone Wars, Dark Disciple for after. I didn't want to put all that pressure on you guys, because then you get into the territory of let's consume every single piece of Star Wars content in chronological order, which I see people on Facebook groups do, and I can tell you this is exactly what happens to them. They start, they hit a couple of weak ones, and they give up before they get to the real good stuff, or the main parts, hence why I didn't overload you guys. But Brotherhood is a really, really cracking book by Mike Chen, and it really delves into that. And I think if you read Brotherhood, and then you watch these episodes, it really succinctly shows how they change, because Filoni's come out and said with Duel of the Fates, which is obviously the iconic music that plays when Maul fights Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan, the idea of that, apparently, according to Filoni via George Lucas, is Duel of the Fates, the fate was, it actually got lost. The Sith won that battle. So Maul got killed, but realistically what it was if Qui-Gon had trained Anakin, the idea is that he wouldn't have fallen to the dark side. But because Obi-Wan had to, and Obi-Wan wasn't ready, and again, as you guys point out, Obi-Wan and Anakin are brothers, but that's not meant to be the dynamic of a master and apprentice. It's meant to be like a father figure. And that's what, again, George Lucas is not the greatest at writing dialogue, but in Attack of the Clones, Anakin does say, he's like a father to me, but I'm as powerful as him, and he shouldn't. But by the time you get to Revenge of the Sith, they're brothers. And that does show. And again, there's certain things when we get to Revenge of the Sith, there's some very clever dialogue George Lucas uses. It is intertwined with some crap dialogue, don't get me wrong, but he has got a genuinely good ideas in certain respects. So I really like that. So Maff, you want to mention, obviously you brought up the brother thing as well. Anything else you want to mention about the brother stuff? We won't get into Ahsoka just yet. We'll get onto that next. But anything else you want to talk about?
I think the thing is, the way I kind of see it now more than all else is Qui-Gon was the dad. He was the dad of both of them.
Yeah.
They took Anakin in and he's like a little stepbrother, and Obi-Wan's a lot older, so he's like the older brother, and he's having to deal with this little snotty-nosed kid and that. But it gets to the point where he starts becoming on par with him. So although he was like, I suppose in one sense, a father figure to him to start off with, once he gets to a certain age, they do become more equal. And as I say, I feel this really builds on that. It builds the kind of, as I say, the more level-headed, sensible one in obviously Obi-Wan, and then the one who just wants to kind of, go and smoke behind the bike sheds and things like that, and maybe kill a few, of those snake people. I can't remember what they are.
Well, the Tusken Raiders, is that what you're talking about?
No, they're like...
Oh, in this one. This is really weird, because I was like...
It's hard to tell what they are.
Well, exactly. I'm like, are these a new species I've not seen? Or are these a species that just haven't been rendered properly and I would recognise them? So I did do a little bit of research, but it was quite difficult, because it's like I look at, and like a lot of the time I use Wikipedia, and I look on it and it goes unidentified Utapau creature, unidentified this, and because no one really knows what the fuck they are, because
well, that's the same as like there's a bit with the big creatures, and it's like they're like mammoth, snail, what
they're just called Utapau quadrupeds. I thought they were the thing that Anakin in Attack of the Clones, when Anakin and Padme are running in the fields and stuff, and then they have like a laugh, and then he tries to mount one, and he rides it a bit and then falls off and gets trampled a bit. That really crap scene. I thought, because Megan, she was like, are they the creatures from Attack of the Clones? And they're really shit love scenes with Anakin and Padme. And I was like, they might be. And I looked it up and I was like, we don't know.
Yeah. And then he ends up with a Jamal. So camel.
Well, yeah. Who could have thought of that? I bet that was a Lucas one.
But I mean, as I say, the relationship between them, I think there's so many points throughout this, the banter and also the heartfelt moments. As I said, the one when they mention Ahsoka and then it kind of gets dismissed, and I thought, oh, come on, guys, you're better than this. You should really. And then they do open up, and it kind of took me back a bit because I expected it just to move on because, you're not meant to have feelings as a Jedi, are you? And I think, again, Obi-Wan is trying to say the right things to him about it. But yeah, I just feel that their relationship is so that's what these 4 episodes are. I know the big Kyber crystal, but it is their relationship and how it builds and goes from strength to strength with them.
It does, and it's one of the things. Mike Chen, one of the common themes in his book, is literally just like when you split up Anakin and Obi-Wan, which is exactly what Palps did. As soon as you do that, that's what causes essentially the end of the galaxy. That's really what it is that when they are separated, that's what causes all the problems. So the whole point of this kind of book is like when they're together, they're unstoppable, which I think the Clone Wars shows that in a lot of ways.
You would say that like yin and yang, to be fair,
100%. 100%. That's a very good way of putting it. Even what they're wearing, even is shown in your thumbnail. Yeah. And that's shown a lot in Revenge of the Sith. I think there is a lot. Again, Lucas is a very visual person. So again, I'm quite a visual person. So I think I can extrapolate that to a degree and kind of glaze over the crap dialogue. But I do want to ask, so I want to come to you, Dave. So we'll touch on the Ahsoka stuff and we'll talk about that. Then we'll loosely go through the plot because there are some other points I want to talk about. But there's the Obi-Wan and Anakin conversations because as Maff said, they touch on it a bit. But really, they talk about Ahsoka and then they talk about the dark side and disappointments. I want to know if you picked up on that, Dave, and if you had any kind of thoughts on that element.
Not anything in particular, but again, just that feeling going through it all of just, this makes sense. So like a lot of people, when I watched Revenge of the Sith for the first time, and again, I'd been through that whole range of emotions from Phantom Menace to Attack of the Clones where I'd been convincing myself how much I liked them. But it was like this nagging doubt that was like, I'm not really sure. And then by the time Revenge of the Sith came along, I think I'd made my mind up. No, these are actually not great. I enjoyed them both at the cinema.
Yeah.
But by the time Revenge of the Sith, I don't know if mentally, I think I'd gone the other way then. I probably didn't give it enough of a chance. But the turn of Anakin it's just jarring when you're only watching the live action stuff. And we've said it before that when you're going through the Clone Wars, it helps to, over a long period of episodes as well. It helps you to understand where Anakin was coming from. And actually, I'm still wounded at the idea that the Jedi aren't these fantastic, amazing people and organization. It's like, oh, you're a bit shit, really. You're asleep at the wheel. Come on. Palps is right there. He's rubbing it in your face. Come on, Yoda. You're supposed to be the sage of everything. So yeah, the conversations about Ahsoka and the dark side, I just felt, oh yeah, again it further solidifies why you're empathizing with Anakin. You're like, actually, yeah, I'm seeing your point really. So yeah, I can't remember it specifically.
They're around like the campfire.
The dialogue was.
So they're around the campfire right at night, and then Obi-Wan says, because Anakin's basically, he's saying that he's frustrated and he feels like he's responsible. And Obi-Wan is going, no, it's not you. Ahsoka chose to leave by herself. And he's like, yeah, but I still feel bad. And he's like, well, don't. And then he goes, well, how would you feel if I went off and did loads of bad stuff? And Obi-Wan's like, well, you're never going to do that. So I never need to think about that. And I was like,
that's right. Yeah.
It's a bit on the nose. But
that was foreshadowing in a big healthy dose, as Deadpool would say. So yeah, that did say that, but also I suppose it did two things in there. It was like big foreshadowing for what's about to come, but also it's that arrogance or the brainwashing almost of the Jedi. It's like, no, you can't have a healthy debate. You can't explore these ideas. It's like, no, shut it down. Just, it's not going to happen. Let's not continue the discussion. Just in a dogmatic way, this is the way it is. So I felt, you're reminding me now, I felt for that reason it was quite clever.
Very good. So, Maff, obviously, what's fun about this is where the characters are at this point in the story regarding Ahsoka. That's where you are, because you have no idea. You don't know. You have no idea. Are they ever going to get to interact again? What's going to happen with them? So, and you've brought up Ahsoka a couple of times. So, the floor is yours, good sir. The Ahsoka conversations in the context of this.
I think it's very clever because you see Anakin wanting to say so much and kind of like, this was my fault. Well, it was our fault. This Jedi Council, they all know and all seeing bag of crap that they are. I was talking to some this morning and I was saying about the more you watch these, the more you realise that the Jedi will just, like Dave, I'm going to be polite and say sleeping at the wheel, but I used worse words this morning. They're just useless. They're just, what do they actually do? They just sit around. I mean, Anakin says at one point, it's like, when Obi-Wan says, well, I could have bought I could have brought Mace with me. He's like, oh yeah, because that would have been fun. And it's like, but he's right, because he would have been quite, no, we do this, we do it. But that's the way the Jedi have been brought up, to be fair. Obi-Wan, he's kind of like, oh no, it's not your fault. She decided to do that. Don't blame yourself. Move on. Leave it in the past. Yeah, but it's eating him up, and you can see it's eating him up. And when he says, what about if I fail? And you can feel that thing of the doubt that's in him. And Obi-Wan's like, but you will. Yeah, but wouldn't it be a good idea to have a contingency plan? I mean, people complain about, saying about Batman sometimes having, kryptonite and all these different things. But if anyone go rogue, there's one person there who's ready to kind of deal with it. And that really, there maybe should have been one or two of the Jedis who are like, okay, your job is to have a backup plan in case any of us go rogue, any of us turn to the dark side. What can you do? And you've got unlimited power. If you want, kind of have that in place, because I'm sure it's happened in the past.
Well, that's allegedly, that's what Order 66 is meant to be for. Apparently, right. If you ask Palpatine under duress, he would say, because when you read,
Palpatine's
I think
a good guy.
Well, yeah. Well, is this going to be all the things like Thanos did nothing wrong, Palps did nothing wrong? The more you delve into it, you're like, the Jedi did screw everything up quite a lot. But I think it's more detailed in Legends, which they deal in Legends. They deal with, there's no inhibitor chips in Legends. The clones just decide to kill everyone. But in Legends, what they do tackle a bit more is what Order 66 is detailed more. I think I tackled this in a prior episode, but it's basically meant to be, if a Jedi does go rogue, the clones can get them, essentially. But as you said, there is no contingency plan, because the Jedi continuously are like, don't worry about that. I mean, I know Acolyte is not the greatest show. I'm standing by at some point. I'm going to make you two rewatch Acolyte in one go and do one big old episode about it, and I'm certain you two will enjoy it more. But in that, there's drips and drabs, like the prequels, of really clever, brilliantly thought out stuff. And one of them is, right near the end, that senator guy who talks to Venestra, and he says, what if one of your really powerful Jedi decides to go rogue and kill everyone? What are you going to do? And Venestra's like, well, we don't need to worry about that. And it's like, that's what the Jedi are like. They're like, it's like when you tell a mate of yours, you should wear a seatbelt, or you should do this. And they're like, I've never been in a car crash. I've never died of a drug overdose, so I can just pop any pill I want in any club from a random stranger. It's like, that's not the mentality to have, guys. The mentality is to have a contingency plan. If this goes wrong, what's the backup? And, I think the Jedi, because of like 900 years of peace or whatever, they are like, anything bad that's come up, we sort it out. So you don't need to worry about anything bad. Dave looks like he's going to
It's almost like who watches the Watchmen, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's not just about having a contingency plan. It's having those checks and balances. So what if someone goes completely mad with power, as Palpatine eventually does grab? I mean, I love that Order 66 was his, if someone did catch him out, it'd be his backup plan. And, it'd be like, yeah, I've spoken to Yoda. He's a great guy. I know he's just a backup plan. All right, mate. All right, yeah.
But Order 66 is bad.
I was a bit worried for a second there, but he's totally put me at ease.
No, fake news. Order 66 is all good, guys. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
It's fake news.
The thing is, Dave's right there. I could see if this did come up, that Palpatine would say, no, I've had this as a backup, because in case if they do go crazy, we need something to take them down.
And it stops the troopers being too loyal as well. Because one of the critiques that certain people give to Anakin and Obi-Wan is that you let your clones, like Pong Krell, his whole thing, he's like, Anakin and Obi-Wan, you're like, I don't let my clones do anything. They're not built to think, they're built to be soldiers, and they do not tell me what to do, and I do not listen to their opinion. And it's like, well, if someone who's got some clones who likes them goes rogue, would the clones follow the rogue person, or would they align with the Republic? And the allegedly, Order 66 is meant to make it so that they would not follow the Jedi, they would follow the Republic.
But maybe that's why they had to have the chips in there, because if you're saying Legends, they just chose to do it, you'd get Cody and Fives and, well, not Fives, you get Cody and Rex, they'd be going, well, we're not going to kill them.
Well, that's the thing. That's one big thing about Legends that I think canon. I mean, the canon Legends debate. There's lots of things. I'm not going to go into all of it, but I stand by. I think anyone who thinks the Legends continuity of Order 66, anyone who thinks that's the better one is a muppet. Like, there's some content within there. There's the Republic Commando games and books, which apparently do a really great job of. There's an Order 66 book by Karen Travis that's meant to be amazing, but you can't have an army of X amount of million people and all of them unanimously just kill their Jedi without, like, it's not even like on when you watch Revenge of the Sith, it's not like Cody's thinking about it, even though he's been working with Obi-Wan for 3 or so years. He literally goes, "It will be done, my lord." And that's it. And you're like, I think you can only really do that with something like inhibitor chips. And then it means that we can get the Clone Wars, we can get close to these people, and then there's an explanation. As I said before, Megan still stands by. She says, Cody is a baddie, because she's like, no, he shot Obi-Wan. I was like, but the inhibitor chip, she's like, don't care. He shot Obi-Wan. He's a baddie. Yeah. And it's like, well, if you didn't have the inhibitor chips, that would be the reality. And how would you sympathize with these characters that are just willing to turn on people immediately?
But that, again, I've said this before. Anakin was around clones, and none of them attacked him. So
and that doesn't get explained in the future thing. Just to clarify,
no,
season 7 of the Clone Wars is not going to explain.
But I would assume that that's probably something that the Emperor's written in there to say, right, this one Jedi you do not kill.
Palpatine's Google Doc. There must be updates. There's got to be. Are
you on a shit list or not?
Yeah, because it's also like, what if you do turn? Because, like, you know, the Grand Inquisitor, I don't know if Palpatine had the plan that the Grand Inquisitor would become the Grand Inquisitor. He was just one of the Jedi Temple Guard who was a bit insubordinate and constantly got refused to read the archives. How would Palpatine know that he's going to turn? You know, unfortunately, I don't know if we're ever going to know, because I feel like Star Wars probably a writer gone, I want to write that story, and everyone at Lucasfilm's gone, don't fucking do it. With being vague with this enough, we can kind of do what we want. If you write something concrete of how Palpatine works this out, someone's going to figure out one of the characters we've allowed to survive Order 66, one of the Inquisitors or something.
Yeah.
So I think that's probably why they're kind of doing it a bit distanced. But so we delve into some of these episodes in general. Again, there's giant Kyber crystal on Utapau, Obi-Wan and Anakin get it, and then it gets destroyed. Like, there's not that much to it. But there is one part which was about when I've written Anakin goes hard at the Toydarian and upsets the governor, which I quite like. So it's when you've got the Toydarian, who's the same species as Watto, who obviously owned Anakin and his mother Shmi. And these episodes, we were kind of touched upon it, which is these episodes, more clear than anything else, show Anakin's turn to the dark side. This is more convincing, I'd say, even than the start of Revenge of the Sith. There's the Dooku part, which obviously is quite a big indication, but really, Anakin still seems like a really nice, upbeat guy. But I think what's meant to show is in Revenge of the Sith, yeah, around lots of other people, and when he's kind of doing certain things, it's easier for him to be the good guy. But I think one of the things I wanted to talk about, which I've got notes on, which is what Maff mentioned, when they fight the Magna Guards and they need to keep one of them intact to be able to extract whatever from his memory, Anakin literally can't do that. He literally struggles so hard. I've written, Anakin lacks patience. He can't help but just destroy things. He won't calmly try and do stuff. He is genuinely, full on goes for it. And I think that really cleverly shows what he's like, what Vader's like. Because Vader doesn't wait. Go ahead.
That's like the bit when they fly to the village earlier on. And as they're flying in there, they kind of see the village and they're going down and Anakin goes, well, here we go. And they've only got primitive weapons. And Obi-Wan's, but wait, hang on a minute. Because obviously Obi-Wan's thought they've got those, they're laser.
It's a laser dart, I think.
A laser dart gun, something. But then they end up getting the pterodactyls, what they are, shot down.
Varactals. I know, sorry, the Varactors are not flying. Sorry, I corrected you wrongly then. Varactor is the little ground creature. I can't remember what the flying ones are called. Let's call them pterodactyls. Sorry, man.
Yeah. But Anakin's like very much like, yeah, let's just go, and it's like charging them off and taking them, and it's like they've taken him to a planet and gone, just off you go, you let loose, and there's the only person around him who can kind of keep him in check is Obi-Wan, but Obi-Wan's kind of letting him have a little bit of free reign.
Well, I'd say there's only three people. Padme, Anakin, so Padme, Ahsoka, and Obi-Wan. Ahsoka's not in the picture anymore. Obi-Wan's got other busy stuff he's doing. And Padme, as we saw in that Rush of the Clovis episodes, she can't really control him. And I think that's really what starts to show. I think the final parts of the Clone Wars are really showing, well, Ahsoka's out the picture. Obi-Wan's trying to do stuff, but he's only one guy. And then even Padme, I mean, Anakin nearly beat her ex-boyfriend to death in front of her. And you're like...
Oh, you see, I think that, I mean, you said that splitting Obi-Wan and Anakin up is what kind of leads him more to go to... I think actually losing Ahsoka is the key point. I think that's the bit that's... You know, even in this where he's still blaming himself, he's still got that guilt. He's still kind of, and he's got the guilt, but he's more annoyed at the Jedi Council that they are so set in their ways, and and there's probably part of him thinking is, if I get accused of something like that, they're just going to turn on me. Why should I have any allegiance to these guys and give all my life and give up all this stuff? You know, I'm not meant to be with Padme. I can't have, you know, this friendship of this kind of brother sister with
the attachment.
Ahsoka.
Yeah.
Can't have any of that because they tell me I can't. But at any moment, if someone points a finger at me, they'll just go, see you later. And again, you feel for Anakin, and you start looking at the Jedi and think, well, what were you actually doing? Because
it's the hypocrisy, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like, well, I mean, you go back a few seasons, the bit when they all attack Cad Bane's mind, and it's like, hang on a minute, I did that and I got in trouble for that. You did that, but it's fine. Well, you can't have both ways.
That exact line of thinking, when we get to Revenge of the Sith, I'll point it out, because there's a bit of dialogue at the start of Palpatine and Dooku, and then there's a bit of dialogue with Mace Windu and Palpatine, and it's exactly the same dialogue, but said by different characters, which I would argue helps understand the turn of Anakin, but we're not quite there yet. Dave, is there anything you want to mention about anything further about Anakin? Before, otherwise, I'm going to kind of loosely go chronological order till we get to another main point we want to discuss. But is there anything else about Anakin or Dark Side or Jedi Council stuff?
No, I think we've said a lot of it, said it all there. I just want to mention we were talking about the arms dealers, and I just found, because I knew I recognized James Hong's voice,
yes,
big
Endente,
character
I think the character was.
Yeah, so Endente. And according to ChatGPT, which is not necessarily right, apparently he's a Sugi. Okay. It's either Sugi or a Suji. Doesn't appear in anything else, but they are short bipeds, some of whom wear armored power suits that provide them with 4 large legs and a segmented barb-tipped abdomen. So I don't think they appear anywhere else. And like I say, it's Sugi or Suji, Suge.
Yeah, because I think I tried looking up some of this stuff, because I was like, when watching, obviously when we watch a lot of Clone Wars stuff, a lot of things I recognize. Like, oh, cool, that's this thing. Oh, but obviously looking at this, and I'm such a visual person, I was like, I don't recognize any of these.
Yeah.
So looking at what he is, and he's kind of flying around on that little kind of speeder bike at Maff. The other characters that were on the 4 legs, you can see now that if they'd have rendered it and made the model obviously a lot better, they're probably just little people, and then legs are actually the crafts, aren't they?
Yeah, because I didn't even realize it, because I'm looking now. So Sugi, they were in those, and they were mentioned in Tarkin and then Jedi Battle Scars, which is one of the Jedi tie-in books. But I'm looking at the picture, and I had no idea until you guys just said that Sugi were in a power suit. I just thought they were just weird-looking aliens.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, it's. I'm looking on Wikipedia as well, and it's like, oh, right, you're now starting to again. If this had been rendered and kind of touched up, you could have seen that and got, it's like the bit when they're examining Master Toulon's, is it Toulon?
Toulon.
and they've just like done a few little scribbles on the knees and on the elbows.
Yeah, I saw
just
that.
to kind of say there's obviously something there. If that had obviously been touched up, you'd have been able to see the scuff marks on them. Again, we're never going to get it, but if they could just touch these up and kind of, release them as a little arc, but it's not going to happen. I quite often rewatch these.
If they've released these,
Dave's already rewatched.
Oh, if they re-release these, because the action scenes, as funny as some of them looked really cool. But sorry, was there anything else you want to mention about the Sugis or anything like that?
Just, I thought it was funny because he's like, oh, if I do this great thing for Dooku and Grievous, it'll go well for me. You're like, sorry, mate.
Well,
this is not going to end well.
Grievous will give you exactly what you deserve.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, yeah,
as soon as someone tells you that, if someone says I'm going to give you what you deserve, I'm like, I'm either going to get a punch in the bollocks.
Triple.
Yeah.
His thought is it's triple, yeah. Oh, and it's like, yeah, well, there's four lightsabers.
If you bargain with the baddies, you got to get payment first. Don't let the lead general come and deliver payment to you. Don't do that.
Again, why do bad guys do this all the time? And that there's you may want to get into this later, but when Grievous fights, again, they're very clever because they do this here as well. Anakin and Obi-Wan get split up in the thing, so Anakin's not where Obi-Wan is so that he don't fight Grievous.
Yep.
But it's like, Grievous, you've got your lightsabers on Obi-Wan's neck. Just cross, and then you've dealt with him. And it's like, no, it's like the James Bond thing, isn't it? No, I'm going to take you back, I'm going to torture you and tell you all my plans, but not kill you. So you've got a chance to escape and then do me over.
It was like as Dave said with the skeleton crew, it was like with Jod. It's like, he's going to die, going to press the button. Oh, no. Oh, I'm going to press the airlock button. Oh, no. It is. It's unfortunate. It's like false dramatic tension, which is quite irritating. But yeah, I did think that I do agree completely, because when I was watching it, I was like, how many times could Grievous have killed Obi-Wan? Jesus. But I think the only thing I can think of, really, if I squint almost, is because Obi-Wan and Anakin are such important targets for Dooku and Darth Sidious, I wonder if Grievous has been instructed, basically, don't kill Obi-Wan in this scenario. But, contrary to that, he's tried to kill him every single other time he's ever interacted with him, properly bad. So, it is a bit of a plot hole, but I agree. There's one of those memes that goes around, which is how bad the Clone Wars writers were, how they were done in when there's that one line of dialogue that Lucas threw into Revenge of the Sith, and then the Clone Wars writers had to spend 7 years writing ways that Anakin definitely doesn't meet Grievous.
I mean, if you look very closely, when he's got the lightsabers at the either side of his neck, if you look at his neck, there's something called plot armor just there. So it's like he's
very good.
But it's amusing because, like, Skeleton Crew, there's that bit with Jod, like you say, are we going to kill him? No, we're not. Are we going to? And then role reversal, a few minutes later, Brutus is held in a claw and Jod just goes, bang, like, you're done for.
Oh yeah, coup de grace, isn't it? Where they just shoot headshot on the floor, basically, which was brutal. But that was good fun. But so we've spoken about the first. I'm just looking at my notes trying to figure out where the hell any of these episodes start and end. So it's the first episode and stuff, and then ends with a Jedi funeral, I think. Then it's a lot of crawling in ventilation shafts. I wrote Anakin loves the killing. That's the thing we haven't spoken about. Anakin randomly being really into having a blaster for the first and only time ever. Like, Darth Vader's not known for liking blasters. Anakin's never been interested in blasters. I thought of Jedi Survivor, because there's that, you can do the lightsaber stance where you've got single, dual, double-bladed, crossguard, and blaster. And I know that was one of your mains, but I couldn't get on with the blaster one. But like in David, the new Jedi game, you fight with your lightsaber and then you've got a blaster as a thing, so you can like shoot while you're doing stuff. I couldn't get along with it, but that's the first thing I thought
really good. It works really. I mean, in that scene, you feel like he's a gunslinger. In fact, you feel he's a bit Cad Baney.
Yes, yeah.
And it's kind of, he looked quite comfortable doing it. But Anakin is a good shot, so it would make sense the fact that he would be quite. It's amusing because he kicks one across Obi-Wan, and Obi-Wan's like, no, I will use my mind and my intelligence. Even though you then use a load of bombs, but
Well,
fair
I
enough.
think Obi-Wan only uses a blaster, A, when he's undercover as a bounty hunter, and B, when he fights Grievous as like a final resort. But
Yeah.
there is a thing, I don't know if it's canon or legends, but I know that one of the things is if a Jedi does actually have a blaster, because they've got such insanely good reflexes, they are basically the best shot ever. And that's why so many Jedi are such great pilots and things like that. It just makes them great at everything. And it's almost like a cheat, because if you pick up a blaster and you're like, got Jedi reflexes, you could just 10 out of 10 every time. Like John Wick situation.
So wouldn't you use that just to kind of,
Well, the idea is that Jedi should never attack, only ever defend. And the only way a Jedi, in theory, is meant to kill someone is if you shoot a blaster bolt at them, they deflect it back at you, then it's kind of it's like self-defense.
Because the thing in that moment when, like, obviously Anakin's with the blaster and his lightsaber, Obi-Wan seems to take that Ezra point of like, no, I've got the Force, running around like he did in Ahsoka.
Well, Dave, what did you think about the Anakin with the blaster? Because what did you think of that? Because obviously it's not come up.
It actually didn't occur to me.
Oh, okay.
As you said it, I suppose it should have jumped out at me. But I think for me, when I watched Clone Wars and stuff, the action scenes, I kind of zone out a little bit.
Especially these episodes.
Yeah. Yeah, especially these ones. But even when they're fully beautifully rendered and whatever, the thing that pulls me in is the dialogue. It's the character interaction. I think one of the reasons I like the Clones episodes most is because a lot of it's quite dialogue heavy, but it's, not just one point of view. It's having dialogue, which is, discussing opposing views and stuff. So I think that's the thing that draws me in. Of course, there's the spectacular graphics and special effects and stuff in the movies and live action stuff. But, yeah, no. So, hand on heart, didn't even occur to me that was a bit of an oddity, and yeah, it doesn't make sense, does it, when you say it out loud?
Yeah, it's one of those. I think this is just again showing where Anakin is really starting to fall, because in this, there was points where Anakin was shooting, and again, because of the bad rendering, it was hard to tell if he was shooting a stun bolt or an actual blaster bolt, because the sprite of the bolt was blue, but the sound effect was of a completely different blaster. But so it was hard to tell. But then one comment from Obi-Wan said something like, "Oh, you've killed all of them," or something like that. But he wasn't being judgy. He just mentioned it in passing, or he was like, "Oh, don't kill this one," or something like that. So I was like, okay, so and Anakin killed, I think it was like 12, maybe 20 people in that room. He just genuinely bam, 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 bam. And that's again one of those scenes where I feel like when we watched that the Mandalore arc, and Anakin like stabs that lightsaber through that guy's chest, you're like, Jesus Christ. I imagine if this was fully rendered, maybe you'd feel a bit more like that, because it would feel a bit more real. Whereas there's points in his action scenes where he's just shooting blasters and I'm just watching people fall down. I'm like, I don't know if they're stunned. I don't know if they're dead. I know it shouldn't make a difference, but I don't know if they're humanoid or some sort of random alien thing. They just look like a weird blobby thing. So I didn't really know about that. But while I've got you, Dave, with Kyber crystals, how did you think? Now we're getting, because the second half of this arc is all about transporting this giant Kyber crystal. What did you think about all that? The Kyber crystal shooting it off and it's shooting beams out. The comedy of it, like when they were carrying it and dropping it, like Benny Hill or Laurel and Hardy sketch. How did you feel about all that jazz? Yeah,
I will just say, just on the blaster thing, just after he's done his John Wick thing, I mean, Obi-Wan didn't seem to have a problem with it. Whereas really he should have done, shouldn't he? He should have thought that was a bit odd. What I thought was more menacing, though, was the last person he killed off. The guy who had the lightsabers.
Like
he's kind of over his shoulder, and he doesn't even look at him, but he sort of gives a look. And I thought maybe if they'd finished this episode off and almost played the Vader type or dark side theme or something like that, that might have been a
just
nice
like three little
nod.
notes.
Yeah, because I thought that was more impactful than the bit that went before, because before he's just been attacked, and a lot of the time, when we see him fight droids and stuff, it's like they're droids, who cares? But these are actual humanoids, so again, it is what it is. The Kyber crystal, not really knowing that was used as part of the Death Star, basically the Death Star is just a big lightsaber, isn't it? I guess.
I think it's like loads. I think the idea is, there's a number of how many chambers it has. I think it's like 16 or 36 or something ridiculous. And the Death Star is basically loads of a giant circle, and each of the dots that make up the circle is a tube that like when you see in A New Hope and you see that blast come out and those guys with the no railings, that's like one of 16 or 20 chambers or something. And it apparently, because in the Force Unleashed game, you go into one of the Death Stars, and so you can kind of see the inner workings, obviously Legends, but it's almost like you've got lots of these like lens things which you get in the inside of a lightsaber, and you just have one small ignition blast, and it goes and it shoots it through 36 giant lightsaber crystals, and then that shoots on another 36 and another 36, and then they aim all together into one, and it just amplifies and amplifies and amplifies, and then becomes a planet killer. But essentially,
amazing engineering knowledge there. All I can think of is I can hear it in at the minute, all the build up. Oh no, stand by,
and all the clicking of the buttons.
Yeah.
The funny shaped helmet.
Yeah, it was a weird one, wasn't it? That helmet, but yeah, I kind of it was a bit comedic, wasn't it? But I liked, again, seeing them work together, particularly when they were trying to bring it down onto whatever that platform thing, to help them move it along.
You see, I thought that was good, because Obi-Wan comes up with a plan, and Anakin's like, well, are we cutting first and then just using one hand? And it made me actually kind of think, I suppose with the Force, it's not the case of, they have to channel both hands to actually use the Force to make it stronger, I guess.
I think it's more how much I think the idea of it, I think it's not about the hands, it's about how much of your brain you are committing. Like, for example, if you're watching a TV show and no one's in the house and it's just you and you're in the darkness or the cinema, 100% of your attention's at the TV. If the lights are on and, your partner's in the kitchen, 90% is going on the TV. If your kids are around, 50% is the TV.
No, you're just not watching TV.
Well, yeah. It depends on the age of the kid and depends on what's on the TV. But do you know what I mean? Like
watching Mr. Tumble.
Yeah.
But do you know what I mean? That's how I perceive the Force, which is it's all about concentration. And I think if you hyper focus on it and you purely meditate and you focus on the Force like Luke does in The Last Jedi, you can do great feats. And that is unfortunately one of the cop-out ideas of why did the Jedi not do this in this scenario? Why did Obi-Wan not use Force speed when chasing after after Maul and Qui-Gon? He didn't think about it. It's plot armor, but it's like he didn't think about it, or he wasn't in the right frame of mind to maybe think about it in that way.
But that's like, there's a comedy skit that I've seen before where one of them gets stabbed, and it's like, Force heal. What? Force heal. It's fine. I've dealt with it. Since when's that been a thing? And it's like, yeah, we can all do it. It's like, hang on a minute. How many Jedi have been stabbed? Qui-Gon got it in the chest. Force heal, but
my kidney.
Yeah. But I kind of felt Anakin kind of questioned him and said, hang on a minute, you wouldn't really thought this food properly. He's going to fall. Obi-Wan kind of, it's like he takes a bit of a back seat in, and it's like he's not supposed to, like he then goes to Anakin like, go get us an animal, and Anakin's like, they don't really gel with me, why don't you go get them, you're good with them. And he's like, can't be asked really. You go do it. And it's like, so he ends up putting back with this tiny little thing that, it's like, why have you got that? Well, couldn't get the other thing, could I? Because you didn't do it.
And he's not a piece either. Anakin really struggles to connect with creatures, and you found that a little bit with Ezra in Rebels, but he eventually learned. And I think what's really interesting is when you see how Ezra is in Rebels, with the right master and right environment, you think that could have really been Anakin, in a lot of ways, which is Anakin could have easily been the good side. It was just every single turn, either Palpatine or Mace Windu was there to screw him over. And I think that was, that was a big part of it. But I want to, Dave, is there anything you want to mention about the crystal stuff or the humor? I know we touched on the humor earlier on, but I didn't know if either of you two found it jarring at all, because as we've been talking about in our Clone Wars conversations, as we've been going on throughout the series, we've been finding that they get more and more serious. And then when you get a couple episodes like the droids episodes, which were generally quite crap anyway, the tone just doesn't fully match it. And I feel like Clone Wars is becoming more and more mature. So, but you guys both think that the comedy actually worked in this. So Dave, what did you, just drilling down on that element a little bit more?
Yeah, so I don't feel like it was slapstick comedy, like the droids in the desert with the little thing that I always
Gascoigne.
forget. Yeah, Gascoigne. How can I forget that? It's like all Gascoigne. But yeah, for me that was all slapstick and silly. For me, this wasn't silly. This was bantering between Obi-Wan and Anakin. So for me, for that reason, it felt okay. It felt within context. And I do feel like some of the dialogue around Ahsoka, about those, struggles with the dark side, being a Jedi and all that, around the campfire. I do feel like it is an episode that makes sense. And as we've been going through all the Clone Wars, I feel like you've got these standalone episodes or these standalone arcs that you could just literally pick up and plonk anywhere. And it doesn't really matter. It doesn't really affect anything. Whereas if you put this in earlier seasons, it wouldn't make sense. It's Anakin in particular. He's right where he needs to be before Revenge of the Sith. So I didn't find the comedy particularly jarring. Like I say, I never felt it went into that silly territory. You didn't have droids, which is my pet peeve, or Jar Jar Binks or something. So for me it was perfectly fine.
What about you, Maff, sort of in that same vein?
There's a line as they kind of approach the where the Kyber crystal is, and there's like, it's just grass. I mean, to us, it's not. It's just like blocks everywhere. But the way they describe it's just grassland everywhere. And it's like, that's no mount, and it's like, oh, there's no moon. That's no mount.
I've got that written down.
I like that little line.
That cracked me up.
And I just thought, oh, you've thrown that there.
That's not mound. That's a spaceship. That's no moon. That's a space station. Yeah, that was clever.
I thought it was clever, but I'm with Dave. I think it's like sibling, banter or even workplace banter. That's what they're kind of doing, and I think it works quite well because it shows that relationship that they're comfortable enough to kind of have a laugh and take the mick a little bit. The only thing that I will say, going back to the campfire, is that conversation that they have, which is you can see on Anakin that he's really struggling with this, and Obi-Wan's kind of dismissing it, and then Anakin says, "Well, I'll take first watch," and Obi-Wan's like, "Okay, I'll lay down," and he just lays down. It's like, hang on a minute, old boy over there is really struggling, and that you don't just go, "Okay, I'm going to go to sleep. I'll leave you to it and let you dwell on it." There should have been, this is a fault on Obi-Wan here, that he should have done more.
Well, the thing, Obi-Wan just never really wants to talk about emotions. He's very much like, most of the Jedi don't either, but as you'll see when you get to Dark Disciple, because Obi-Wan is kind of the third main character in that book, I'd say, after Quinlan and Asajj. And it's really interesting because when you have the book perspective, you get the inner thoughts of them. It's third person, but you get the inner thoughts. And one thing we'll get to when we talk about Dark Disciple is, especially with Asajj Ventress, hearing how she feels and thinks about certain elements gives so much more weight to her character. And when Obi-Wan interacts with Quinlan Vos, like they did in that Clone Wars episode we watched, which introduced Quinlan, with that, Obi-Wan and Quinlan don't get on very well, but they respect each other. And when you read Dark Disciple or listen to it, you'll hear how Obi-Wan feels about Quinlan when they're together and vice versa. And I think there's elements there that are really interesting. But Obi-Wan just doesn't want to talk about emotions ever. Like, even when Sabine dies, Satine, he doesn't... Afterwards, he doesn't really mention it. He occasionally mentions it to Anakin, going, "I know what you're going through, remember, what I've got with Satine," things like that. But he doesn't ever delve deep. He never sits down and says, "Come on, bro, let's really empty our hearts." He doesn't want to know, really. He's quite uptight and things. And that's just kind of who Obi-Wan is. But without Anakin having anyone really to vent to or to talk to, I think that, again, feeds into the repression and why every time he experiences emotion, it's a negative, angry emotion that explodes out. So again, I think it works. I think Obi-Wan, also, as you say, they're brothers. And like, we've all got those mates or siblings or whatever, where you can chat with them about anything, but you just generally don't talk about relationships, or you don't talk about mental well-being. And if they came to you and said, "I'm really struggling," you'd definitely talk to them. But when you just hang out with them, it just doesn't really come up. And I think maybe feel like that.
I saw a comedy thing the other day, and they were talking about like men and women are so different that like women know everything about it, and you can be mates with a guy for like 20 odd years, and one of them goes, "Oh yeah, I saw my sister," and it's like, "You've got a sister?" but to be fair, you know, men sometimes do kind of do that. There's certain bits we just don't. We're not as good at sharing. You know, we should be. We should be a lot better. But there's certain things we just like. Well, I'm not going to blunder them with that because you know they don't want to know the fact that you know my wife, my sister, or my mother, or whoever it is doing me head in at time. They just want to talk about the fact that you know Liverpool are doing well, or Ipswich should get hammered 6-0. You know,
news round is it?
Yeah,
but that's it. And I've got that with a lot of my mates. I'm generally the most open person of my mates. You know, I'm an open book. But even then, there's been times where I wouldn't say I've been struggling, but there's things on my mind, and everyone's having a good time, and I'm like, and people are like, "Oh, how are you?" And I'm like, I'm not going to spend ages bringing the whole mood down and spending 20 minutes explaining why I feel like shit today. Like, I'm just going to not mention it for ease. And I think men do often get into that struggle of where they go, I won't mention it, I don't want to bother them for ease. But then if you do that consistently for like a decade, then you can really have some issues. But this isn't a male's mental health podcast, although it's a very important thing. Listen to other stuff we spoke about. We're here to talk about Star Wars, the escapism from all that, all that dark shit. So with these episodes, so we've got the crystal stuff, it gets transferred. There's quite a few fun little things. Obi-Wan says hello there, which is always fun to hear. We've got the that's no mound, a spaceship. When Anakin does the whole lightsaber trick thing, killing that guy, Obi-Wan says, that's impressive, you know. And there's lots of little clever things I like. And then in the last episode, when Obi-Wan comes to the council, and then Yoda calls him Cavalier, and Obi-Wan's like, calling me Cavalier? What about you? And Anakin's like, yeah, don't worry. Like, that interaction really made me laugh. I thought that was really funny of just, it's like when your siblings, like the older sibling, does something the younger sibling does all the time, and the older sibling gets in trouble. And they're like, why? Yep. And they're like, well, they just expect it from me. And
it's that Men in Black point. You know, when with the sunglasses and Wilson puts one and goes, yeah, but I meant this look good. That's Anakin and Obi-Wan. It's like, you do this all the time, and you know, why am I getting shit for it? And it's like, yeah, but you don't do it as good as what I do. That's why.
That's amazing. So we've got there's a bit of a space battle thing, and then there's like the trying to intercept the ship with the crystal. Then there's the whole escape pod thing and that false tension there. Obi-Wan fights Grievous.
That was a good bit. Sorry, the flying of the ship,
yeah,
and that Obi-Wan says to Anakin, you know, don't let him get in our tail, don't let him shoot. And he says, don't worry, I'm a professional. I'm thinking, yeah, at crashing, because you know, how many times have you crashed on that? But it was just that kind of cockiness, and then
never tell me the odds.
Then he has that bit with his escape pod and that.
No,
he can't shut the door.
Yeah, and it gets really close to the edge then. But then when, again, this is another callback to Revenge of the Sith. When they jump out of the escape pods then, when you actually see in Revenge of the Sith, and this, because obviously I've seen this film so many times, I know it by heart. As soon as I see something from Revenge of the Sith, I was like, I see it. It's there. When Obi-Wan, his ship goes into the hangar in these episodes, it slides into loads of droids. He jumps out while it's still moving and then slices some of them. That's what he does in Revenge of the Sith. What Anakin does is he sits in his ship as it's gliding and destroying loads of droids and only really jumps out when it comes to a stop. And that's basically what he does again. So this episode has so many parallels to that. But another little thing I noticed actually is there are so many Attack of the Clones references here. Obviously it's Clone Wars, so there's going to be quite a few. But again, I think Dave touched upon this earlier, which is I think they've got essentially in my mind, they write the script, they record the audio, they then animate it, and then they go back and amend the audio, because there's certain bits where they're on this speedery bit, and the noise of the speeder was so loud compared to their dialogue, and was on like a 15-second loop, so I could hear it every time it looped, and it was really annoying me, and it was the sound of a ship from Attack of the Clones, and I was like, this isn't that ship, this is rubbish, break the canon. But I think that they go back and tweak certain things. And I feel like they were using a lot of Attack of the Clones sounds, which I don't think they would have used in the final cut, which I thought was funny. But I've got a thing which was one thing I really like to reference to Attack of the Clones, which was when Anakin gives Obi-Wan back his lightsaber, and he goes, don't forget to lose, don't keep hold of this weapon. This weapon is your life. And he's like, yeah, all right, I get it. He's like, oh, it's just nice to be able to say that to you for once. And it's because that's it's a paraphrasing of the dialogue from Attack of the Clones when Anakin's chasing Zam Wesell and he just jumps out of a ship in Coruscant and just falls. And Obi-Wan's like, so reckless. And then he catches his lightsaber. He's like, this weapon is your life. Sorry, Master. You need to take care of this. I will, Master. You need, kind of the berating bit. And I really like, because that kind of shows that they both kind of let go of that. So is there anything else we want to tackle in these 4 episodes as we get to the end of this Clone Wars conversation? Anything we haven't touched upon?
So again, I don't know if I had this thought the first time I went through Clone Wars. And I don't know if it's necessarily this episode that's solidified it, but then I feel like it kind of has. We've talked about Obi-Wan's faults and the fact that that relationship has gone from Master Padawan to very much a brother thing, a dynamic. And as we've been talking there, I'm just thinking, actually, Obi-Wan's got his faults, but did Anakin turn because of Obi-Wan? Probably not. However, had Ahsoka stayed around, and I know this is all written retrospectively, so of course, so the answer is no. But I almost feel like because Anakin doesn't have that Padawan to be an example to, he doesn't have to, he can just have all of these teenage angst sort of thoughts and whatever, and he's not getting any answers from this emotionally repressed, even though he's great, Obi-Wan, but he's asking him these serious questions and deep philosophical questions and not really getting satisfactory answers. But he doesn't have to be the example. I think if he had to continue to be the example to Ahsoka, then he might not have strayed so easily to the dark side. I think that's probably more of an influence. As I go back and watch these now, that's more of an influence on him turning than Obi-Wan and probably even wanker Mace Windu.
I think I agree with you, because I think that there's points where Anakin potentially goes a bit too far, and then he pulls himself back because either Ahsoka's there or Ahsoka goes, why are you doing that? And in the moment, if you're about to beat someone half to death and someone says, why are you doing this? You probably would go, okay, maybe I don't need to be so aggressive. But I think because Obi-Wan for years, as we see at the start of Attack of the Clones, and they'd been together at that point for like 10 years, is Obi-Wan is constantly berating him. And we see Obi-Wan would be such an annoying master to have. He's constantly scorning Anakin in front of everyone, embarrassing him in front of people all the time. And when you have a dynamic with someone like that, even if they're right most of the time, you just start dismissing anything they say, because they're just like, everyone's got a family member or a friend who used to be like that, whereas like anything you do, they're going to criticize you on. So what ends up happening is you just kind of tune them out, because you're like, no matter what I do, you're going to criticize me. So I can't tell when you're doing valid criticisms or if you're just kind of being a nagging dick. Whereas with Ahsoka, she would only question Anakin when she really thought he was going a bit too far. And I've only noticed, since you said that, Dave, I think pretty much every time Anakin's really gone into the dark side a lot more has either been when he's not with Ahsoka or when he's doing something specifically to save Ahsoka. They're the only 2 times. When he's with her, we've never seen him force choke anyone when with her, I don't think. And we've never really seen him beat someone half to death with her. So I think, and because of, Padme's his wife, so he's got those emotions there with her, hence why I did that with Clovis. And I think Obi-Wan, he doesn't listen to enough. So I think you're onto something, which is Ahsoka really is the central point of kind of, I feel like almost the Clone Wars, again, I'm only just having this thought now, is it almost shows that Ahsoka probably stopped Anakin going bad much sooner. And we even see that a little bit because, Palpatine, there's that one episode we spoke about in one of the finales of season 2, I think it was the Yoda episodes, where Palpatine and Dooku were like, we're going to take down the Jedi. Oh, no, Yoda's pushed us back a bit. We're not quite there yet. We'll hold off for a little bit. I wonder how many times Palpatine has thought, right, it's time to kick in Order 66, but I need Anakin to be on my side, and I'm not too sure. And I wonder if because I think it's basically Yoda who kind of gives Anakin Ahsoka, that's what's indicated in the movie. And I'm thinking, I wonder if maybe Yoda, with all his visions he kind of sees, he almost had an inkling of that. And he was kind of Yoda giving Ahsoka to Anakin was almost in a way to balance things out because of what Ahsoka does in Rebels and then in the Mando stuff. But also, imagine if Anakin had turned really early on into the Clone Wars. Yeah, maybe the public wouldn't have hated the Jedi as much, but really, I wonder if Anakin was just, Palps was keeping an eye on Anakin to see how bad he got, and as soon as he was ready, that's when, because really, I know Maff may not remember Revenge of the Sith, but the whole thing that kicks Revenge of the Sith off is everyone just kind of wandering around fiddling their thumbs going, we've killed Grievous, now what? Anakin goes and talks to Palpatine, and then Palpatine reveals he's a Sith Lord. Anakin doesn't drill down. Palpatine just tells him, just outright. And
he's
goes,
bored, basically, isn't he?
Well, yeah, he's like, well, I've done everything.
Hell, I've been in plain sight for so long.
You've killed Dooku, you've killed Grievous, like, what are we going to do now? And he's like, well, I'm the Sith Lord you're looking for. And he's like, really? Oh my God. And he's like, well, it's up to you now what you do. And that's Palpatine is like ultimate gambit. So I wonder, he probably could have revealed to him much sooner.
I wonder, because I think Ahsoka's the linchpin. I think she's the one that Palpatine thinks, because Palpatine pushes to a certain degree. He kind of keeps edging towards and knowing that, Padme and Anakin. I think Anakin's got more love and affection, obviously in a different way for Ahsoka.
His responsibility for her.
Yeah, he's very responsible. He's very much he's big brother to her, and this is why it's hit him so hard. I think losing her as it's like, well, what's the point? I can do what I want, and you go back. I don't know if it's season 1 or 2 when Ahsoka's trapped in the underground in the tank. I think it is. That's
Geonosis, so I think it's season 2. I think.
And how Anakin's like, no. One of them says, "Oh, we lost a Padma. Never mind." And he's like, "No, she's mine." And that's early on, and then you go many years later and that. And as I said, I think taking Ahsoka out just kind of sets him off on a path of like, well, fuck it then.
100%. And I agree completely. And is there when I gave you both the floor's final comments, you and Dave both said something, Dave, that was incredibly insightful, and I really haven't thought about that. So that's going to be something I'm going to be pondering for a while. But Maff, what was it that you wanted to say as we start to wrap up?
Obi-Wan, when he's been taught or being held up, and then the droids go to take him away, he mentions the Yavin code. What is the Yavin code?
I don't know.
Oh, right, okay.
I think I was meant to look that up, and
He says something about I should be blindfolded and before I'm executed and that, and it's like, oh, the Yavin code. What's it? I'll write that down now. Ask Mike because he's sure to know.
I'm just looking it up now. It's the only time it's ever been mentioned.
Oh, right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And also, just to clarify, these episodes, the unreleased episodes, were released on StarWars.com for a while. I think I might have said that right at the start, but you could just view all these on StarWars.com, but now you can't, and I don't know why. But yeah, so I remember thinking that, and I was like, oh, that's fun. That could be used in the future. No. It's seemingly not in Legends or canon. It's just there. Well, it's in canon, but never mentioned before or since.
Right, fair enough.
So again, I think it's weird with these episodes because certain stuff you go, oh, I'm surprised I haven't delved deeper into that. Like these creatures, the Sugi, who've got like these small creatures who are in giant animatronic beings. You're like, that sounds cool. Yeah, we're just not going to really do that. It's like, well, they kind of already do with other creatures, but not. I mean, they do it with Gascon on our favorite droids episode, but yeah. I think I've basically touched upon pretty much everything on these episodes I've got noted, and I think we've probably all done that. So. I'll give you guys the final floor, but I'll say the next things we're going to be doing is going to be the Dark Disciple book. So anyone who's listening who wants to listen along, obviously can pick up the book physically, like you see in the background for me, or you can listen to it on Audible, which I think is what the three of us are doing. You can do an Audible trial if you want. I'm not sponsored by Amazon, but if you go on Audible, you just do a trial, you get one free book. And so I'd recommend doing Dark Disciple. All the Star Wars audiobooks have got full, there's always a voice actor who can do all the voices. It's normally Mark Thompson, who's the one who narrates this book, and he's excellent. You've got Star Wars music in it. You've got blaster sounds, lightsaber sounds, sound effects of creatures, and everything feels really Star Warsy. So it really is immersive. There have been times I've just been doing the dishes listening to it, and then I've just kind of zoned out and just been imagining it. So really recommend that. But obviously, people, if you can't pick up Dark Disciple for any reason in these next episode when we tackle it, we will be talking about the story in quite broad strokes, and that will conclude the Clone Wars Legacy Project, because Dark Disciple was made from two arcs of the Clone Wars, which we'll delve into, and then we're going to finally after that get into season 7 of the Clone Wars. So very, very excited about that, and you can find me on all the usual social media places, etc. Dave, any last words before we wrap up?
I've started Dark Disciple and I am bloody loving it, so I can't wait for us to come back and discuss that one. But yeah, to finish off this unfinished episode, or our episode, it will be finished. But yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed it. Definitely not just for the completionists. If you're a Clone Wars fan, it's definitely worth watching. It definitely adds to the canon, and the only downside is they didn't finish it off. And I get why the Bad Batch episodes, because it's about clones, it's easier to take that off and become its own thing. Whereas because this is Anakin's story, they finished off season 7 with the stories they wanted to tell. I can kind of understand why they didn't have this one, or they wouldn't go back to it now. It's too far gone, but yeah, definitely well worth a watch.
Amazing stuff. Maff, final words.
Similar to what Dave said. I mean, if you can spare an hour and a half, sit down and watch it, I think you'll really enjoy it. It does build a lot on their characters. That's what it's mainly about, kind of seeing their paths and where they're going. So I'll definitely sit down and watch it. I haven't started the Dark Disciple. I'll probably binge listen to it this week. So
it's easily done, I will say. I didn't even think before whilst doing it. I wasn't even sure if I was going to fully listen to it again, because I was like, I know it really well. I've listened to it through like twice, because I listened to it once, then I did a podcast on it again. So I've listened quite a few times. I was like, I'll give it another go. And I was like, it's so good. Especially because we're in the middle of Clone Wars. I'm so happy, and there's so many references.
You mentioned, because I don't know anything about the book, but obviously I know Ventress is in it, and Obi-Wan's in it. You mentioned someone else.
Quinlan Voss.
Quinlan Voss.
He is a black gentleman with dreadlocks.
Guy, isn't he?
He's the one who is he can do psychometry like Cal Kestis, but he's the OG. So in his episode, it was the Hunt for Zero episode, where they were trying to track down Zero the Hutt after the Clone Wars movie kind of stuff, and then Cy Snootles, the one with the long mouth, who's in the special edition of Return of the Jedi, she shoots him. And so that's the only time he's in this, but he's actually a character, which I'll get into in Dark Disciple, but he originally started off as an extra, and then he found his life in Legends quite a lot, and then George Lucas was like, yep, let's pull him into put him into my stuff. And so this book is really all about, it's like 85 to 90% Asajj Ventress and Quinlan Voss, and then almost the framing stories around it is Obi-Wan stuff.
Right. Okay.
Yes. So it's very, very good. It's a lot of people, this is their favorite Star Wars novel. It's not mine, but it is a really good one. But I'm very excited to tackle that.
I've bought that, so I will be listening to it this week.
And I liked it so much, I've got it on Audible and also physically, because I'm a nerd. But friends, thank you so much for tuning in. All of we won't do our guest spots, because whenever this comes out, it'll probably be so late. But all in the description, there's going to be all the stuff we normally do: Back to Filmography, Spider-Dan, VHS Strikes Back, Chris and Dave's Reality Cast, all that great stuff. Follow us on social media, listen along, and tell us what you think. Wherever you're listening, like, share, subscribe, all that amazing stuff. Loads of other Star Wars content coming away for 2025. We appreciate all of you. And of course, my friends, may the Force be with you.
Always.